I'm Alan Childress. I'm the Tulane law professor who co-teaches notary classes on the side and has written some notary prep books, including the side piece book you can get on Amazon or in ebooks at various sites. I wanted to update a video that Michelle and I did a couple of years ago. So on YouTube's the channel at School of Notary, please subscribe. Uh, there's one called Getting Your Commission Once You Pass. It's from most of it's still valid. It's very detailed. So I still recommend that as something that you might want to look at to know all of the steps once you pass the exam to get your commission to go active with the Secretary of State. It goes into a lot of detail about each of those steps, including extra information about resources that you can have at early in practice, forms that you can get, stamps and where to buy stamps and some discounts on those. Things that you probably want to learn pretty quickly after you've passed the exam. So congratulations on passing. So I'm not replacing that video, and all of that information is still good, except for a few things that I felt were out of date. And lately, I've been pointing people who told me they passed. I've been pointing our students who passed uh, to that video, and then always have to say, but please read the first footnote about the changes in the law. So I thought I'd better just update it. So let's talk about some of the things that have changed. First of all, what hasn't changed is the forms that you need to either upload to your Secretary of State account for notary, or you can deliver them in person at Archives Avenue at Baton Rouge. But you still have to do a signature sample page, an oath of office, a bond, and then pay a fee while you're doing all of that. So none of that has changed as such, other than details about them that I'm going to get into. Signature sample, I'll leave it to that previous video to take care of that. But, and of course, paying a fee, that's always there. Every step you take, you know now, with the Secretary of State, you're going to be paying. But let's discuss the updates on two things. Most of all, the oath of office and the bond requirement. Now, one other thing that's been updated is we talked there about how we had just created a forms book and downloadable Word forms on our website, schoolofnotary.com. And I just wanted to say that we put out a new edition of that adds more forms. So it's now got 200 forms and updates the older forms that had changed because of the law. So I recommend that you look at that. And I would mention that the other big forms book people can get from West Publishing, it's a Cadillac edition of a forms book, but it costs $1,264. So you could perhaps find this at your local law library or county law library, parish law library, of course. But no individual is going to wind up buying it, I think, whereas ours is still quite affordable. I recommend that to you. But the real changes are in the oath and the bond requirement. Now, the oath requirement really hasn't changed, other than they've made the law a little bit better in that they've clarified that there will be no charge for your filing the oath of office with the local clerk of court. Recall that you have to upload an original or a scanned copy of it to the Secretary of State's website, or delivered in person at Archives Avenue as part of your commission documents. But you also have to take the original and file it with your local clerk of court. And to do that, so your parish clerk of court, to do that, you used to be charged sometimes even $100 by many of the parish clerks of court. But a statute that was passed last year and became effective August of 2025 now says that it's recorded by the Secretary of State at no charge. The other commission documents they still charge for, so it doesn't change your upload fee. Also, to be recorded by the clerk of court in a book kept for that purpose at no charge to you, the notary who's filing the oath of office. So I have heard stories of clerks of court that haven't caught up to this yet and are still trying to charge for it. So you need to know that that statute. Maybe bring a copy of it in with you just in case they do that. But it is Louisiana Revised Statute Title 42, Section 162 will be the thing that protects you if somebody tries to charge you. I actually don't think you need to make a copy and bring it in. If you're talking to a deputy clerk of court and they suggest that you have to pay for dropping off an oath of office, simply ask for a supervisor or say, my understanding is politely that the law has changed and this is not charged for anymore. And you'll find somebody in the office who knows the change in the law and won't charge you for that. So that's now better than it used to be, and more uniformly so among the parishes. Many parishes didn't charge for this either, but but now it is a law that they can't charge for it. So that's great news. The main change, though, is in the bond requirement. The requirement used to be up until February of 2026, February of 2026 of this year. I'm making this now in July of 2026. They used to be the requirement was that you either had to have a $10,000 bond or an errors and omissions policy called an E&O policy. Either one would be satisfactory, but the requirement was $10,000. They've made it better and worse in some ways. Worse in that you can't substitute that E&O policy anymore. You have to have a bond, period. The bond that protects the governor, really the state, from any mistake you might make. That is required regardless of whether you have an E&O policy. So you can't substitute that. That's a little worse because it used to be you could just buy the E&O policy, protect yourself, and not have to get a bond. However, I'll talk later about why you still would want to get an E&O policy, but it's not part of the uploadable required commission documents anymore, and it's not a replacement for the E&O for the bond requirement. The other change they made is to increase the bond requirement from $10,000 to $50,000. And we were all kind of panicked about that. Luckily, the price for a bond hasn't really shot up accordingly. It's still quite affordable, and it seems that the commercial surety companies that offer these are not really raising their rates just because now they're writing a $50,000 bond instead of a $10,000 one. And that tells me there aren't a lot of claims on these policies and they're not losing money on them, or else they would say, look, we now have to shell out a lot of $50,000. So now we're going to charge a lot more. So the good news is I don't think bonds get used a lot, but they are required to get your commission document in and kept up every 5 years to retain your commission. So you definitely want to keep your bond current and set a kind of a calendar for yourself 5 years later to make sure that you renew it. Anyway, the bond requirement is now pretty easily satisfied. I didn't mention this in the earlier video, but I did want to mention that on your Secretary of State's website where you're choosing what to upload, it gives you the choice between a commercial bond and a personal bond. Commercial bonds are the ones you're going to get. You may think, well, I'm not a company, I'm just a person, so I'll get a personal bond. No, it is a commercial bond. The entity selling it to you is a commercial company, a commercial surety, and that's why it's called a commercial bond. A personal surety is a substitute for that, but since it winds up costing a lot more, I'm just going to eliminate either a personal bond or a property bond as an option for you, because there's no way that you would have put up property or have someone individually post a bond for you, a personal surety bond, when that has to be approved by the clerk of court, and they will charge $100 for that, and rightly so. So nobody's going to go that route because it will always cost them more, and it doesn't provide any more protection or fulfill the requirement any better. So while it used to be kind of commonplace that somebody would put up property or they'd get a friend or a sponsor to provide a personal surety, given the steps you then have to go through to get it approved by the clerk of court and pay $100, it's not worth it. You're going to get a commercial surety bond. Commercial surety bonds actually are pretty cheap. So, for example, Colonial Surety online sells a Louisiana $50,000 bond for notaries for all right, I think it's $69. I've read on the Facebook pages that some even offer a $50 bond. I don't know about those personally, but I will just say that it's really nice to know that you could get a 5-year policy for $69, not 69 times five, $69 total for 5 years that satisfies the state's requirement at a place like Colonial Surety online. Other good places to get the bonds, though the price might be a little bit higher, include notarystamp.com, rotarynotary.com, and I believe some people have found their State Farm agent to supply them. My only warning about using an agent is make sure that they can process this pretty quickly. They have experience with notary bonds and not just commercial surety bonds generally, because we have heard stories of people who went with an agent and then we're still waiting 3 months later for it. Whereas Colonial Surety or Rotary Notary will send it to you pretty much almost immediately by PDF, or at least by the next day, and by email in a PDF. So that's good. Now, once you get that bond from any of these sources, see if it has a blank line for the principal to sign, because you have to sign that. You're the principal if there is a blank line requiring you to do that. And a lot of people lost their commission temporarily because they uploaded a bond when they were trying to renew their commission. They uploaded one that didn't have that signature line filled in, and the Secretary of State suspended them until they did that. So you don't want to be in that position where you don't get your commission or you get suspended because you didn't just sign it. So even though it comes in a PDF and you feel like, well, I could just upload the PDF, what you need to do is print it out, sign it if it has a place to sign, and then scan and upload that. That would be the document you use for your oath. I will say that that they'll also often have at the bottom a place for the clerk of court to approve the bond, because used to be the clerk of court had to. And the clerk of court still has to approve property bonds and personal surety bonds. So that line, it's just a vestige of what it used to be. But for commercial bonds, the kind you'd get from Colonial Surety or one of these other companies, even if it has a space for that, just leave that blank. Don't worry about it. Do not take it to the clerk of court. When you're filing your oath, for example, don't show them that, or they'll be tempted to say, oh, we have to approve that and charge you $100 for it, when they don't have to approve it anymore. So even though the Secretary of State's new rule is that you have to have a $50,000 bond, they made it a lot easier and cheaper by saying, but you no longer have to get it approved for $100 from the clerk of court. And so ultimately, this change in the law might even save us money, certainly save us the inconvenience of having to get it approved by a clerk of court before we get it done. See, the oath of office, you have a month to file it with the clerk of court after you've uploaded it. So used to be, since you would probably have to do both of them, people would do it immediately. But now you can wait on the oath of office to take it to the clerk of court and drop it off, and get your commission in the meantime very quickly. Saves you a lot of time. So going back to the bond, though, you don't bring it to the clerk of court. You don't get it approved by the clerk of court, assuming it's a commercial surety bond like you would buy online or from an insurance agent. Use the PDF of it or the printout of it, sign it if it needs that. Ignore the bottom part about getting it approved. Then scan and upload that, and you've fulfilled your requirements. So the only things left is to say, well, what about E&O policies, errors and omissions policies? Where do they stand? The way people were describing it, it sounded like they no longer allowed those. No, they still allow them. They just don't accept them as a substitute for the bond that protects the state. So you do still have to get a bond that protects the state. Okay, you understand the state is going to worry about itself first and getting sued for your mistake. But even though it's not required to get your commission, I am urging you and strongly advising you to also get an E&O policy. Now, you don't have to get it the first week, this week, while you're trying to get your commission. It could be something you hold off on. I wouldn't hold off too long, though, because if you make a mistake and you get sued for it, or any kind of claim against you, the E&O policy protects you, whereas the bond only protects the state and doesn't keep you from getting sued. So you definitely want an E&O policy. One of the best reasons to have it is it also provides you an attorney or at least a claims officer who will help you if there is a claim made against you, and that'll probably save you more than the coverage of it anyway. Another good reason to have an E&O policy is that many of the signing services, if you're going to become somebody who does refis and closings, and the signing services assign you work, will require you to have an E&O policy and not just a bond. And they'll want it to be a 25,000 or above E&O policy. So you could get by with a $10,000 E&O policy, but to maximize your chances to get this kind of work, if you want to do that kind of work, you definitely want that E&O policy, and you want it to be 25,000. So now, where do you get the E&O policy? Probably many of the same places that you're shopping for a bond. I know that, for example, Colonial Surety has at least a 3-year fairly affordable E&O policy, and 5 years is required for the bond, but whatever covers you is fine for the E&O policy. And so they have that. I'm not sure of the price. It's probably around $120 or something for 3 years. I know that Notary Stamp, singular, notarystamp.com, has a 5-year, $25,000 E&O policy, probably around $182. But that site, you can often get a discount code. Like right now until July 7th, there's one that I wrote down, Save Fourth, SAVE4TH, one word. Save Fourth gets you 20% off. So that would turn a 5-year policy into the price of what other companies might sell a 3-year policy for 25,000 of. So right now it's a pretty good deal. But even without that particular code, if you sign up for their newsletter, they'll always give you a 10% off code, and that makes an $182 E&O policy much closer to $162 and $165. So it's pretty affordable. You're talking only about $30-$40 a year to protect you from a lawsuit and to provide you with somebody defending you in the event of a claim. Anyway, that updates the previous video. A lot more detail in that one, a lot of tips and tricks about getting your commission. But the fundamental difference is the oath. You no longer have to pay for it if you did before. When you file it, when you drop it off at your local clerk of court's office. And secondly, the bond requirement has changed to 50,000. You can't get commissioned with a $10,000 one anymore, and you can't get commissioned with an E&O policy. But you can easily get a $50,000 policy online from a commercial surety. You then don't have to take it to the clerk of court anymore, saving you potentially $100. And in some ways, then the state is doing you a favor by increasing the amount, but letting not having to have it approved by the local district. The local clerk of court of your parish. So that's the good news for all of it. I hope that this is helpful to you. And then putting the two videos together, I think, is a good way to start once you've passed. And congratulations on passing. Thanks, guys.